Spring is springing for some of us. It has sprung for Florida State. Spring practice is on the horizon. We're going to talk that and more on today's edition of Locked On Seminoles. Drake, you know what to do.
Dave, let's ride.
You are Locked On Seminoles, your daily podcast on the Florida State Seminoles, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, and welcome back to another edition of Locked On Seminoles. What's up, everybody? It's your boy Drake here, and today in the stream yard, I got Dave. And as Dave said, spring has officially sprung. Dave, what are we talking about today?
Drake, let's talk about what we want, our biggest wants out of spring practice. Let's talk 3 wants. There's plenty more than that for this team. We all want a million things. We want a national championship. We want Jordan Travis to win the Heisman. Those are too easy. Let's talk more specific things that we want to see from this team out of spring practice.
No, I mean, I can completely agree with that. Folks, we want to thank each and every single one of you for us your first listen each and every single day. And as always, as Dave says at the end, up at the beginning of the show, please comment below what you want to see at spring practice, and we will talk about it later on throughout the week. But Dave, I want you to go first, if this is your baby. This was your idea over the weekend. What was your first want to see out of spring practice?
Okay, so 3 things just are the most obvious to me off the top of my head. I'm not going to say this is necessarily the biggest one, but I think it's the most interesting one, and the thing I think we know possibly the least about. What's the tight end room going to look like? And that's probably like the most overlooked thing about what this team's going to be to me, because we bring in Jaheim Bell and Kyle Morlock, both of whom were among the top tight end transfers in the country. Jaheim Bell is supposed to be a Swiss Army knife, one of the most athletic tight ends in the country. And those two are supplanting or replacing a tight end room that I think was dependable, if nothing else. It wasn't great. It wasn't flashy. There was nothing special about the tight end room. It was dependable. It was there when you needed it. You knew what you were going to get out of it. We don't know what we're going to get out of this tight end room with Jaheim Bell and Kyle Morlock, but I think a lot of us think it's going to open up this offense to a whole bunch of new different dimensions, with now 2 guys the size of Johnny Wilson, with Wilson and Morlock, that are able to line up opposite each other. Jaheim Bell is going to be too fast for a linebacker to cover and too big for a safety to cover. That's what I think we're all thinking. If is that what's going to materialize out there on the field? Because if so, man, did Jordan Travis come back for the greatest show on turf? There's going to be too many options for a defense to account for if that tight end room really is what we think it can be.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if we see an offense akin to not basically scheme match, but like how fun to watch, kind of like the Eagles' offense this past offseason, where you had a Jalen Hurts throwing to an AJ Brown, a Devontae Smith, like that. You have a lot of options now for Jordan Travis to basically play with, and that goes to kind of my want and my number one overall is I want to see how Winston Wright actually is coming back from his big injury from last season. I do think that Winston Wright, he came in with a lot of fanfare, and rightfully so. His resume did back it up in the Big 12. He's one of the best receivers in that conference, and unfortunately, he did have that car accident that did, prevent him from playing last season. And I want to see rehabilitative-wise, he does look better. He does look fully healthy. That's what we mainly wanted to see. So now I think the next step is to see actually how is he going to be able to adjust to basically going back onto the field, how he's actually going to be able to adjust to playing an in-game, because it's going to be a lot for that. I know conditioning practice, he looks good, but now we need to see him, in contact practice and also in a game. But to me, I do want to see my number one is like Winston Wright, opposite of Johnny Wilson, opposite of Micah Pittman, because Ontario Wilson is gone. You need someone to fill that void, because Ontario was very reliable. He was there for everything we needed, and also he had some great plays and had some great moments last season. So to me, Winston Wright, it's for him to step up into that role, and I think he's ready for the challenge.
Yeah, it's funny because you can't listen to a Florida State broadcast without being reminded that Johnny Wilson is 6'7", without Michael Pittman popping off the screen as like the guy that's just gonna go across the middle and he'll survive that hit. But what we never hear about is the fact that our possibly our best receiver last year didn't play a snap. Winston Wright, a lot of people thought was going to be the best receiver of that very heralded transfer class. And guess what? He still might be. Winston Wright still has a chance to be the best receiver on a team that includes Johnny Wilson, that includes Micah Pittman, that includes these tight ends coming in. So you're right. It's funny because those two choices by us really do mesh well together. There's a lot of options that we don't know exactly what they're going to look like this year. And if just one or two of those options we're talking about pan out, we're talking about an offense that is going to be really scary. Like Russell Wilson likes to say, unlimited potential for this offense.
Whoa, the only Russell Wilson thing that we kind of take from him is the let's ride thing, and the thing is freaking hilarious. But I mean, you're right too. And also, Kyle Morlock, I mean, I just want to see him score his first touchdown because he does look like Jim Halpert from The Office. He looks exactly like him. I just want to tweet out Timothy Halpert when he scores his first TDO against Miami. So,
Yeah, really looking forward to that, Drake. And it's funny that you mentioned the word reliable because I think you have something reliable to tell our audience about.
I do, and folks, they've been with us since day one. They'll be with us to the very end. That is our friends over at Built Bar, aka Built.com. As y'all know, Dave and myself, we have upcoming nuptials coming up. He's getting married, I'm getting married, and we need to get in better shape. As we know, I got the treadmill over here, got the Peloton. Peloton's not being used. The treadmill, though, I got to work my way back to the Peloton. And you know what we need to do besides that? We need to eat better and get right. And Built Bar has been us there to help us out. As you know, Dave is the cookie dough connoisseur. Myself, I'm the Cherry Barcia Casanova. But if you don't like those two flavors, there are 17 other delicious flavors to choose from. Because not only are they now at Walmart or at Sam's Club, I have seen Built Bars in the wild, a.k.a. Publix, down here in South Florida. So head on over to Built Bar, head over to Built.com today to get your delicious, nutritious treat. Because, folks, in 2023, we're getting healthier together. All right, Dave, we're back. We're rocking and rolling here, locking on Seminoles, and folks. We want to thank each and every single one of you bringing us your listening each and every single day. Now, Dave, you started off. I had the last one, so now it's back over to you. What's one of your other wants and needs to see through spring practice?
Okay, so this I think is more of a luxury than anything, but it may ultimately not be in terms of Florida State meeting its potential. On the defense, I think the last two for me have to be on the defense. And frankly, the fact that the first want for me wasn't on the defense, I don't think that's an indication that I think that the offense has more to prove or more to improve than the defense. That's not the case. The offense was ahead of the defense last year. I don't care what the advanced stats tell me. I have eyes. And I expect the offense to be ahead of the defense going into this year. If this team's going to meet its potential, defense is going to need to not be the liability on the field. They're not going to need to rely on the offense to necessarily methodically move down the field every time to buy them time. So what I'm most curious to see from this spring practice is who in the heck is going to step up to fill the field general's role at safety to replace Jammie Robinson. I think a lot of people are just still hoping that Akeem Dent in this, I think this will be his last year here, right? I I think a lot of people still believe in his massive amount of potential. Like you see so many plays, right? You do too, Drake. You've been
Dude, he's like one of my favorite. He's one of my favorite players, to be honest. You just see it all there, and it's all in high school too. The kid, that's why I call Akeem the Dream. That the man has all the tools in his arsenal to be one of the best safeties in the country.
He really, really does, and it's frustrating that he hasn't become that yet. Especially with Jammie Robinson here, I expected that to make his life a lot easier, so that on the other side he would flourish. He was good last year, and at times he was better than good. And I still
He
think
needs to stay healthy. He needs to stay healthy. That's a big thing too.
I know. And look, if this can be that year for him, you could see him have a Jammie Robinson type year where he plays himself into a top 3 round pick in the NFL. Yeah, he absolutely has that type of potential, but more importantly, him playing to that type of level, I don't know who's a more likely fit to step up in that role. Like, I would love to see Travis Jay, who a lot of people have forgotten is on this roster, just suddenly become what I thought Travis Jay was going to become, what his high school tape told me he could become. That's not the most likely scenario here. If it's not Akeem Dent, I really don't know who it's going to be. Shaheem Brown's a little young for that, I think. A lot of people have high hopes in him too.
It's year 3. It's year 3 for him.
Excuse me, right. But I I don't know that he's ready yet for that spotlight. Akeem Dent, I don't know who it's going to be if it's not him. So I'm really hoping for a big spring out of him.
Well, I know he's going to be a good one. I mean, he has, I think, that strong safety spot already locked up. We need someone who's going to assign him to me. I mean, that is a valid, I guess, concern. You do see some cornerbacks, I guess, you are actually are transitioning back over to safety. I know people were thinking about Renardo Green, but Renardo Green actually was your best corner overall last season. He definitely, Weapon X, stood up and showed out. And that kind of goes to my thing where I want and need to see a strong and pure development when it comes to the cornerback room. I do want to see. We saw players like Kevin Knowles and an Amarion Cooper, who they had very good, very solid freshman campaigns, and they took a little bit of a step back this past season. And now we know a little bit more after the fact of the season. There were a lot of injuries that plagued this team last season that a lot of players did play through. And to me, I would need to see a fully healthy Kevin Knowles and Amarion Cooper for this season. Also, I want to see who we got Renardo on the field. You got Renardo. I want to see A.Z. Thomas also take the next step up and be your number 1-2 corner. Alongside a Fentrell Cypress. And Fentrell Cypress, all we've heard about him is that he is the real deal actually from over at UVA. And to me, if you look at the depth of the extra cornerbacks room now, like we always said, it's the most talented room at the school with the program. I mean, if you're seeing Jaren Jones as your swing cornerback, like that's not bad at all. The kid actually showed that he's come a long way from his first few seasons here. And to me, he's starting to become a leader kind of in that room to kind of like set the tone for everybody else. So to me, I want to see development from the cornerbacks. And I think that starts and ends also with Patrick Surtain. I want to see what he truly is made of because he was in the NFL and he did help out players like Kader Kohu for the Dolphins. So I want to see if he's able to bring that to FSU. And I think he actually will be able to do that in full. So,
yeah, I always say this, that I think the defensive back room last year and even the last few years has remained the most talented position group on Florida State's roster. I think by recruiting talent, that would remain true. It's just every year Florida State, if nothing else, is able to bring in 4-star and the occasional 5-star in the DB room. And that was where our last 5-star left on the roster was. So, look, I agree with you. I think a lot of people, see that stat about how Florida State allowed the least air yards in the ACC and are like, oh, wow, the coverage must have been pretty good. Coverage was very good last year. It was 54th in the country, and that was largely due to the cornerback play, like you're saying. Pat Surtain has his job cut out for him, I think. You're right. There's a lot of technique that needs to be unlearned and retaught, and it just there were just so many times where you looked out there and you wondered what these kids were learning in practice because like they're so athletic and a lot of these kids are so strong and fast, and it's just like knowing where they were supposed to be on the field and what technique they were supposed to use with the receiver at certain points that just was so confusing and led to breakdowns that just did not need to happen with the guys we have here on the roster. It did not seem to me to be a personnel issue. It seemed to be a coaching issue. We've addressed the coaching issue and brought in a guy who has demonstrated he knows cornerback technique in his career in both playing and coaching. I absolutely expect him to right that ship. And if he does, and that's no longer a liability, cornerback play, and if we can go 3 deep at that position reliably, yeah, that's going to make this defense leaps and bounds better. I'm right there with you.
No, I completely agree. And folks, please don't go anywhere. We're going to have a few words from our sponsors, and then we'll wrap up today's show with the last segment as I hand the ball off to Dave, as is tradition. All right, Dave, we are in the last segment of today's show. As always, I'm going to hand the ball to you. What do you want to talk about before we send the folks out on their merry way this afternoon?
Okay, here. So we're going to do our third want of spring practice here, but I'm going to throw this to you, and I'm going to ask you, what is your biggest luxury want? Not something that we necessarily need this year, but something that you would just really like to see that you think would be one of the biggest luxuries for this team going into 2023.
I want Keziah Holmes to be RB2. And I'm saying that because I think that the running back room truly is elite at this point. I really do have not high hopes. I mean, we've seen Trey Benson show out basically when Trayshawn Ward went down. He took a stranglehold on the running back room as I think we both predicted actually heading into last season, and rightfully so he did. And LT is still there. LT is still performing well. If we're able to see a Keziah Holmes that actually is able to take the RB2 spot and actually be solidified there, that means you have 4 legitimate RB2 options actually out there, and you can be a lot more creative with your play calling. And that's something that we saw Mike Novell at Memphis with a Kenneth Gainwell, a Tony Pollard, a Antonio Gibson. When he has that like 4 horseman mentality, actually with the running back room, that's what you want to see at Florida State when you have a Trey Benson, elite, could be a Doak Walker Award watch list winner. Keziah Holmes, a player that out of high school was a top-rated recruit. You have Lawrence Toafili, who is basically when he's in space and when he has room to make people miss, it's really damn fun to watch. He's extremely elusive. He's got the little lightning bolt below his name if we were playing Madden actually with the team. And then you have Rodney Hill, who also I think that basically he's already almost there. He's already a big kid. He's already a fast kid. He reminds me a lot of Devontae Freeman when he runs the ball. So to me, when you have those 4 players all in unison, and because that actually shows that he actually is more of a bigger take than we actually thought he was when he first came in as a Scott team player, to me, that's the most luxury one I think I see with this team.
Yeah, that is a good choice. And I think that would have been a choice for either arguably for non-luxury, because Trey Benson is not going to be able to play every snap this year. There's going to be times where he's not on the field. And it was really easy for that last year when you just knew that was going to be Trayshawn Ward instead. That was a luxury. Having 2 running backs of that quality was a huge luxury. We have the talent on the roster, I think, to replicate Trayshawn Ward's production last year. You're right. It's just going to be a matter of who steps up, and I agree with you. I would love to see that be Keziah Holmes. I love his tape. Penn State thought a lot of him. There was no bad reason he left Penn State. He wanted more playing time. He's going to have an opportunity here. I'm really excited to see that. My choice is going to be again on the defensive side of the ball. Here's the reason I think this is a luxury. Jared Verse last year made a lot of people feel like Florida State had one of the most premier pass rushing units in the country. Right? If you go down, though, the list of the best pass rushing teams, Florida State was 38th, which means that Jared Verse's elite performance last year managed to keep us alone in the top 40. But the problem was reliability and consistency opposite him, because go look at the PFF grades for our pass rushers. Jared Verse was by far first on the team, 87.4, right? And if you go below him, find the next edge rusher, and that's played more than 7 snaps. And you got to go down to Pat Payton at 67.6. Below him, you got to go down to Leonard Warner, 65.3. And lastly, Derek McClendon, 62.7. Drake, none of those grades get the job done for pass rushing. I do have faith that one of those guys, just one of Patrick Payton or Derek McClendon, most likely is going to be the one to figure it out. We've brought in more options through the portal. The talent is here. The coaching does not seem to be an issue. Jared Verse flourished. So I'm just really hoping one of the edge rushers opposite Jared Verse is going to make his life easier. Maybe give them a reason not to double team Jared Verse and single cover, or to put a single lineman on whoever's on the other side. And I don't think that's too much to ask for. Maybe it just might be a luxury for this team, though, depending on if Jared Verse is the monster we think he could be this year.
I mean, no, I completely agree with you. I do have a lot of faith in Derek McClendon and also Dennis Briggs. I think moving in on the inside. And I think the last one of luxury want that we have is I think the defensive tackle spot. I think it is solidified, right? And now we just want to see basically a player like maybe I want to see, for this is me getting greedy, I want to see one of the younger kids like a Bishop Thomas or a Daniel Lyons, because I do think the world of both those kids, and I think those kids are going to be players that are going to be able to not replicate, but basically fill the void that both Braden Fisk and Fabian Lovett are going to be leaving. Fabian Lovett especially, because Fabian Lovett has been basically your most consistent player on defense for the past few seasons. And he's someone that basically has worked to where he's at now, and that basically he's a tough kid, he's a strong kid, and that's someone that basically I want to see the younger kids say, hey, you need to look over at what Fabian's doing, because that kid definitely sets a tone and sets kind of the template of what you want to do actually as a defensive tackle in the Power 5 college football. But Dave, we have reached today's end. As always, you know what? Not as always. I'm behind the ball back over to you. Please, as always, as you always do, send the folks home.
Yes, everybody, thank you for listening. Thank you for being here on Locked On Seminoles. We love you. We appreciate you. We could not do this without you. For our podcast, find us anywhere you find your podcast: Spotify, Stitcher, Apple, Google Play, and other places. For the YouTube, give the video a like if you could, if you would. It takes 2 seconds, and we greatly appreciate it. Also, if you could subscribe to the channel, ding the little bell, turn those notifications on, find out when our episodes drop, and of course, leave us a comment. What are your biggest wants to see out of spring practice, and what is your biggest luxury item you'd like to see?
And for Dave, this was Drake, and we'll see y'all next time on Locked On Seminoles. Take care, everybody.
Go Noles.